Today's daf we're going to be learning is Chullin, daf Kuf Gimel. We're going to get started with a quick review of what we started yesterday. And there's a study guide today which will help for the first half of today's daf. And we will be finishing the 7th chapter, which is very exciting, especially because we're going to get into milk and meat and things that are a little bit more practical for us. We're going to start with Rabbi Yochanan. If you remember, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish each had different sources for where we learn Aver min achai, Basar min achai, right? A limb from a live animal, flesh from a live animal, and meat from a treifa. And then we said, well, if you eat this and that, you're going to be liable 2 or 1, all depending on which psukim you learn it from. But what was clear is both of them learned Aver min achai and meat from a treifa from a separate pasuk. It was just the basar min achai that there was the issue about if you take flesh from a live animal. But that is going to contradict, or we're going to have a bit of a problem with one of the approaches, urimini, from the following machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish on a different issue, but very similar, and we're going to see a bit of a problem. Achal ever min achai min atrefa. Before we were talking about you ate an ever min achai and you ate meat from a treifa, 2 different animals. What if you ate the same animal? It was a limb from a live animal that was a treifa. So Rabbi Yochanan amar chayav shtayim, which makes sense because you're liable for ever min achai from one pasuk, and for the other pasuk you're chayav the meat from the treifa. So even though you ate one thing, it's 2 prohibitions. Although we're going to get into what about isur halal isur and all that, and isur halal isur in general, right? Those 2 things aren't prohibited for the same. You don't have what is forbidden for one. We don't bring another prohibition on it. So we'll talk about when each of these prohibitions take place and how that works. We'll get to that soon. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish amar eno chayav ela echat. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says you're only liable for 1. Okay, now bishlama le Rabbi Yochanan nicha. So Rabbi Yochanan makes sense with what we saw at the end of yesterday's daf, because there's 2 different prohibitions. Ela le Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish kasha, but according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, why are you obligated only 1? Theoretically, you transgress 2 different verses. Again, putting aside the issue of ein isur halal isur, which we'll get to soon. So Amar Rav Yosef lo kasha kam b'beima achat. Rav Yosef says this is not difficult. What we talked about in yesterday's sugya was 2 different animals, as I said in the beginning. But this is 1 animal. Okay, now, when 2 different animals, obviously you're going to be liable too because it's 2 different verses. But in 1 animal, they have a machloket. Now we're going to have to figure out, and that's going to be the more complicated element. Not so hard to understand, but it's going to be, we're going to see the Gemara is going to struggle because it's going to bring 4 different explanations. What's the machloket if it's 1 animal, which is our case? So Amar Abaye. Abaye is going to bring 3 answers, or at least the Gemara is going to, the next 2 are kind of unattributed, but it seems like it must be Abaye offering different suggestions, and then Rav is going to come. So the first of Abaye is the following. Kigon, it must be a case shenitrefa im yitziat ruba. It became a treifa when as the majority of it was coming out, meaning as it was born, coming out of the womb, right? Now we're talking about that you took this limb off later, and the animal was a treifa. But when did it become a treifa? It became a treifa as it was coming out of the womb, as the majority came out. Exactly the moment of birth, it became a treifa. And now what would be the machloket then? Okay, Mar Saval, so the first opinion Rabbi Yochanan holds, Beima b'chayeha le'evarim omedet, a beima when it's alive, is already viewed, this goes back to what we saw yesterday, this machloket, already viewed as if it's in parts, meaning the prohibition of Aver min achai kicks in immediately, because we view each limb as if it's ready to be pulled out and will be prohibited. So Isur treifa v'Isur Aver b'hadei adadei ka'atu. Now when does that kick into place? When the fetus comes out. So when the majority of it came out, at that same moment, it became forbidden because of a live, right, a limb from a live animal. And it became forbidden because it was a treifa. Now, obviously, this didn't happen until who knows when, later, but the prohibitions all kicked in at the same time. From that moment on, you're obligated, right? It's already potential. You could take a limb off and be obligated, and it's a treifa. Umar Saval, and that's why you're chayav too. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish holds, when it's alive, it's not considered broken up into parts until the moment you pull off a limb. When you pull off a limb, that's when Aver min achai kicks in which case, lo ati isur Aver, chayli isur treifa. Well, you can't have an isur Aver min achai kick in when you already have an isur treifa. The animal was already forbidden because it was a treifa. So that's why you're only obligated 1. That's explanation number 1. Okay, if you got that, don't worry. We're going to mess everything up now. We're going to throw things and we're going to see all different permutations here. Ibai tema, second option. Maybe everybody holds that it's not actually viewed as parts, which means the Aver Menachai prohibition comes in when you pull that limb off. And the treifa must have happened before. Ubemaiti isur aver mechala isur treifa kamiflage. The machloket is, does the isur aver come and does it have where to go on top of isur treifa? Why would you say yes and why would you say no? Mar savar at isur aver chayla isur treifa. Why? Because, it doesn't say it in the Gemara, but we know this because it's asur to ben noach. And because it's asur to ben noach, that's what we call an isur mosif. This adds an additional. The prohibition is now forbidden to additional people, not just to Jews, also to Bnei Noach. That makes it also more chamor, we've called this before, or Isur Mosif. It adds on, and therefore you can add a prohibition of Ever Menachai onto a treifa. And that's Rabbi Yochanan, that's why you have both. But Mar Savar, very simply, Lo ati Isur Ever Chai Isur treifa. That doesn't work. You don't have an Isur Ever Chal Isur treifa at all. Ibaitem, a third option. The opposite now. Everyone holds, as soon as it is born, immediately the prohibition of Ever Menachai comes into play. But instead of saying it was nitrafa as soon as it was born, it was nitrafa later, which means first it was Ever Menachai, then it was a treifa. And this is just a simple, is Isur Chala Lisur or is it not? We normally say it's not, but there are those who say it is. So let's claim that Rabbi Yochanan holds, yeah, Isur Treifa can be Chala Isur Aver. Isur Treifa, by the way, also covers the whole animal and not just the Aver. And that's a way to say it. But anyway, seems to be simply, does Isur Chala Lisur? Rabbi Yochanan says yes. And Rish Lakish says, Mar Savar Lo Ate V'chayil. It doesn't apply. Rava Amar, fourth answer, Kigon shetalash mimena evel utrafabo. You took an aver off of the animal, and when you did that, you made the animal a treifa. That's a great explanation, because that often happens. If you remove certain limbs, you'll make the animal a treifa. So Mar Savar behema b'chayel evarim. Now the question is going to be, is this where two things happen at the same time or not? So if you say behema b'chayel evarim Eina omedet, right? The behema b'chaya is not, or lav le'evarim omedet. Okay, some people fix the gears to match the way we kept saying it. It's the same thing. That an animal is not meant for looking at as evarim. And then Isur Ever, Isur Treifa, Bahadi Adadikatu. So the moment you pulled off the limb, that's when Isur Ever Menachai came into place. It's the exact same moment that it became a treifa. Okay? And then it's both are going to be chal. That's Rabbi Yochanan who's chayav shtayim, who obligates you twice, 2 sets of lashes. Umar Safal behema b'chayeh le'evarim omedet v'lo ati isur treifa chay le'isur ever. But the other opinion, Rish Lakish says, no, behema b'chayeh is meant for evarim, and then the isur ever menachai kicked in at first. Now comes isur treifa. Well, that's not going to go anywhere, so it's only isur ever menachai. Okay, those are our 4 possibilities. So again, we kind of threw everything up. Is the machloket whether it's levarim omedet or not levarim omedet, or is that a given? And the isur, right? Is it isur chal isur or not? Or is it isur chal isur when there's isur mosif or not? Or is it somehow a case where everything happens at the same time or not, depending on whether you hold levarim omedet or ain't levarim omedet? Okay, now we're going to go to the second sugya, which is going to be similar. It's going to be a different case though. And it's going to be a bit of a different machloket, but very similar. The first 3, here we're going to have 3 possibilities about what the machloket is, and they're going to match the first 3 in the previous section. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So now a statement's brought in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Achal chelev min achai min atreifa chayav shtayim. If you ate chelev from a live animal, that was also a treifa. So now what happened was you took a limb off an animal. So there was ever min achai, and you ate the chelev of it. And you ate, it was a treifa, okay? And it's Ever Minachai. So you can't eat chelev, it was forbidden chelev. So you ate forbidden chelev, but you also ate forbidden chelev that came from an Ever Minachai. So it's chelev Minachai, basically, okay? So you have chelev, Minachai, Minatreifa. So you have 3 surim again. Ever Minachai, treifa, and chelev. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, in the first version, Rabbi Chia bar Abba's version, you're chayav shtayim. Because, okay, we're going to see why, because you really did 3 isurim. You can see where they're going to go again. Well, maybe some of them happened at the same time, but the other one didn't, and then you're only chayav shtayim. Amar le Rabbi Ami, v'leim amar shalosh. So Rabbi Ami says, why don't you say three? And in fact, Shani omer shalosh. Rabbi Ami says, I hold three. And Itmar Nami was also said, Amar Rabbi Aval, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, achar chelim menachayim and atreifa chayav shalosh. And Rabbi Aval quotes the same Rabbi Yochanan as saying three. So we have one opinion that Rabbi Yochanan said two. We have Rabbi Ami and someone else in the name of Rabbi Yochanan say that Rabbi Yochanan says three. And there's Rabbi Ami on his own and Rabbi Aval in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So again, what's the root of the debate? So the first option, again, as we said, that became a treifa as the majority of the body came out of the womb. Again, you're going to say it's meant at that moment to be viewed as evarim, meaning ever menachai kicks in right away. Now, as it comes out of the womb, that's when chelev kicks into play. If you remember, we had that whole sugya about chelev, how the chelev of the shlil, according to Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis, is not forbidden, only right when it comes out, not when it's a fetus. So isur chelev, isur treifa, and isur ever menachai all happened at the same time. And that's the opinion that says three. That's on this side. Okay, we're starting this time always on this side, on the left side of the chart. The ones who say you're chayav three is going to explain that way. And the one who says two is going to get rid of Ever Menachai, because Ever Menachai, we're going to say, oh, wait a minute, when it's born, it's not for Evarim. It's not meant. The Ever Menachai kicks in only when you pull the limb off, and that was much later. And Isur Chelev, Isur Treifa Ika, but Isur Ever Lo Atechai. The prohibition of the Chelev being from a limb of a live animal is not going to kick into place. Second option. Everybody holds that an animal in their lifetime is not meant to be viewed in parts. It's only when you pull it off the limb. Now, chelev and treifa, we're going to say the animal was nitrifa as the majority went out, like the previous. So treifa and chelev all kicked in at the same time. But the question is Isur Ever Menachai going to be chal? As we said before, right? Ati Isur Ever, v'chai Isur chelev, Isur treifa. If you say Isur Mosif, Isur chal, right? And Isur chal Isur, but yes, if it's Isur Mosif. Ever Menachai adds because it's also forbidden to B'nai Noach. So that's going to be added in addition to chelev and treifa, and you're going to be chayav three. And the first opinion of Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo atichayil right? Amar savar, Lo atichayil. It doesn't apply. Okay? Very simple. A third possibility. Okay, the opposite. Everybody thinks right away the Isur of Ever Menachai kicks in at the same time as Isur Chelev. But the treifa happened later. And the whole machlokes is Isur treifa going to kick in or not? Mar savar atichayil midi dehave achelev. Damar mar. Okay, so one holds it is. Again, the last opinion, the second opinion, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Aval, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan. Why midi dehave achelev? Just like chelev. Now here we're going to talk about it. Why is there chelev on a treifa? So now, if you say, right, they happened at the same time, so you could say they happened at the same time. But here we're going to assume the treifa happened later, because that's what we said. And then Isur Chelev kicks in first. Then Isur Treifa kicks in. So Isur Treifa is Chal al Isur Chelev. How do we know that? Okay, now I did put a little note here on the chart based on the commentaries that this is only if you hold Ein Isur Chal Isur, even an Isur Kolel. Because if you hold Isur Kolel, Treifa actually, Chelev, applies only to certain forbidden fats. And treifa is for the whole animal. So that would be an isur kolel and that would work. But if you don't hold that, then you'll have to hold by this. Okay? And then they're going to say like the following. HaTorah amra. Okay, so now they're going to say mar savar atichayil midi dehavi achelev. They're now going to say like this. The fact that it's the chelev from a chai and it's Ever Menachai is going to, the Ever Menachai prohibition is going to also be trumped with the treifa is going to be chal even on the Ever Menachai. Because remember, the Ever Menachai kicked in early, and the chelev kicked in early, but the treifa happened after. So now we're going to say, just like treifa is also on top of the chelev, treifa is also on top of Ever Menachai. How do we have that? Because remember, Ever Menachai and chelev all happened at the same time, so they're both going to be there no matter what. So now we're going to say the following. Just like chaylev is overridden and its treifa can be chal on a case, it can kick in even when there's already a prohibition of chaylev, we're then going to say the same thing with the aver. How do we know about the treifa and the chaylev? Because there's a passive that basically says this. HaTorah amra, chaylev nevela v'chaylev treifa yaseh l'chom malacha v'achol lo tochluhu. You cannot eat, I'm going to focus on the last part of this pasuk, you cannot eat the chaylev of a nevela and the chaylev of a treifa. Now, this is a little bit weird because you can't eat a treifa anyway. So why do we have a special prohibition for the chaylev of a treifa? So what do we learn from this? We learn from here that even when you have an Isur Chaylev, when it becomes a treifa, you now are obligated, not just because it's forbidden fats, you're obligated because it's also treifa. So there's a special pasuk that tells us that treifa can basically not really override, but sit on top of Isur Chaylev. So if that's the case, right, Yachul, so Yavo, again, the Torah Amra, Yavo Isur Nevela, and treifa, right? Yachul al Isur Chaylev, and Yavo Isur Treifa, v'Yachul al Isur Chaylev. Both nevela and treifa, no, nevela doesn't interest us, but both nevela and treifa can do it. And then we're going to say, and therefore, treifa can basically go kick into chaylev. Treifa can also kick into ever menachai. So if we have your ever menachai and we have chaylev, we're going to add to that Isur treifa. Ve'idach, a chaylev hu dechayev, dutar michlalo, turning out I'm a bet. This might work for chaylev. Why would it work for chaylev? Because why can treifa be chal on top of chaylev? Because chaylev is weaker. Why is chaylev weaker? Because there's a permissibility of it. Where's the permissibility? Chaya. Remember, there's no problem of chaylev for chayot, undomesticated animals. Aval aver, delohutar michlalo lo. But in aver, there's never a way that you can eat an aver. So maybe it has no permissibility. So maybe treifa can't be chal on that. And that's the first opinion, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, and then Rabbi Yochanan, you're only chayav shtayim, you're chayav for chaylev, you're chayav for ever menachai, you're not chayav for treifa. Okay, so to summarize this section, we started with this machloket about this contradiction, about this sugya where all of a sudden we see ever menachai and a treifa, you're actually only chayav one, and then we say, no, that's because it's one animal. And then we went into Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, are you chayav two or one? And what the machloket is based on, what are the four possibilities. And then we went to the same thing with chaylev menachai and a treifa, you have two or three, two different opinions within Rabbi Yochanan, and three different options as to what the machloket is. Okay, that's it for the study guide. Now we're going to learn Amubet without a study guide. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar. When Rav Dimi came from Israel, he said the following thing. Ba'amine Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish mi Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. Chilko mi bachutz mahu. This is a very bit of a weird sugya. We're going to say if you divide it up a kizayit, okay, I'm going to look at Rashi, read in Rashi because Rashi explains it very well. Lekizayit ever menachai chilek l'shnayim. You took a kizayit of ever menachai and you split it into two. Kodem she'inenu l'toch piv, before you put it in your mouth. And achal ze levado, and then chatzio hasheni levado. And you basically ate half of it, and then you ate another half. Now, normally, if you do that, we always say the food joins together as long as it's within a certain time frame. So, for example, right, if you eat bread a little bit over a long period of time, and altogether you ate a kazayit, but it was over a long period of time, it's not considered a shear of eating. Okay, so you're not going to, let's say, have to bench on it. Okay, but in this case, we're going to suggest that but if you did eat it within a short period of time, but in separate bitefuls, then of course you're chayiv. So what about here, though? Here they're asking why. Why is here any different? Because they say here in Iver Menachai, this is what we call a chidush. It's a unique halacha. Because it's not your typical forbidden of eating items, because eating is usually edible items, and here it's bones and sinews that are not really food. And yet you're going to be obligated, even though you have to know a kazayit of meat, but you have a kazayit of meat, bones, and sinews. So it already is different. And maybe then your kazayit has to be eaten at one time. So what does it mean eaten at one time? That's going to be what the sugi is going to discuss. So they say if you split it outside your mouth and then you put in less than a kazayit in your mouth at one time, finish eating it, then put another kazayit in a minute later. But we're going to say, Amalei patur. Rabbi Yochanan says you're exempt, completely exempt. Mi bifnim mai. What if you split it up inside your mouth? Like you started chewing and you put some on the side and you swallow the rest and then you swallow that after. So Amalei chayav. Okay, what you would have expected. You're chayav then. It's already been in your mouth. Okay, but we're going to see it's a little bit more complicated and tricky. Ki'ata Ravin Amar. Now that was when Rav Dimi came. He said that Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question. This is what Rabbi Yochanan answered. Split up outside. You're not obligated. Split up inside. You are obligated. But when Ravin came, he said, Chilkomi b'chutz patur, mi bifnim, Rabbi Yochanan Amar chayav, as we saw, so this doesn't contradict, but Rish Lakish Amar patur. But Ravin said that Rish Lakish thought you were exempt if you split it up inside your mouth. So now what's the reason? Rabbi Yochanan Amar chayav harei nehene grono b'kezayit. You're obligated because your throat benefited, not even your throat. Garon is throat, but what it means is your mouth. You tasted. It's all about the taste. What matters in Evrim and Achai? It's that you benefited. What do you benefit from when you eat? It's the taste. Not so much that it goes down, it's the taste. Rish Lakish Amar patur, achila b'me'av b'inam v'leika. No, you need it to go down into your digestive system. If it doesn't go down, then you're not obligated. So since this didn't go down altogether, but it went down separately, in other words, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it was all together in your mouth, and you benefited from it in your mouth. According to Rish Lakish, it didn't go down together, the whole kazayit, in your body. So that's a problem, meaning you're not obligated. It's not Evrim and Achai. So now they say, now, how would you ever be obligated? You don't usually swallow a whole kazayit all at once. So how would you ever be obligated in Evrim and Achai, according to him? Because it always gets kind of divided up in your mouth and swallowed at different points. So he says it's in this particular small bone that's on the, Rashi explains it's on the kaf hayarech, it's on the spoon of the thigh, which we talked about a lot. Why? Because it has basar v'gi ve'etzem ashlimo lekazayit, and you don't chew it, Rashi says, you swallow it. So that's the kind of thing you could swallow as kazayit all at once. But most things you really can't. And then we're really minimizing, according to Rish Lakish, this prohibition. So that's Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. If it's divided outside, everyone agrees you're not obligated. If it's divided inside, we have a machloket. But comes Rabbi Elazar with a third opinion. These are all rabbis in Israel, and that's why Ravin and Rav Dimi were the ones who brought us this. Now comes Rabbi Elazar, another one, student of Rabbi Yochanan. Afilu chilkomi b'chutz nami chayav. He has a completely different approach. He says even outside it's obligated. It's just like every other prohibition. Why? Because mechusar kreva lav ke mechusar maaseh dami. This isn't, the fact that all you have to do is bring it to your mouth, that's not like it's missing anything major. So if you put it in your mouth, as long as you eat it within the time of chila pras, which is the time it takes to eat half a loaf of bread, which is about 4 to 9 minutes, depending on commentaries' definitions. But as long as you eat it within that time period, you're going to be obligated. Okay, those are the three opinions. Now continuing along in this, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Kazayit Shamru, when we said it has to be a kazayit and it has to be swallowed, right? He's interested in the B'nai Me'ayim, so like reasonably he says, Chutz mishal bein hashinayim. We don't count what's stuck between your teeth, though. You might have put a kazayit in, but if you don't swallow a kazayit because stuff gets stuck in your teeth, we're going to subtract that and you won't be obligated. Rabbi Yochanan Amar afim bein hashinayim. Rabbi Yochanan says it even includes what's between your teeth. However, came Rav Papa and said, no. I'm Rav Papa. B'shel bein hashinayim kulei alma lo pligi. Nobody thinks it's a problem because you don't taste the stuff that's in your teeth because it never got to where your taste buds are. What if it got stuck on your palate? Now there already you've tasted it. So Rabbi Yochanan will obligate you because your mouth already benefited, you tasted it. According to what we already saw, Rish Lakish is going to say you need it to be digested and it never went down. So tasting it in your mouth doesn't really help. Now we're going to start the last section of the chapter with a discussion that's a little bit disgusting, talking about vomiting up food, but it's going to be very interesting because, again, they're getting to the theoreticals about what the idea here is. What isn't required in order to be obligated? So Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Asi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Achal chatzi zayit vehikio. What if you ate half a zayit and you vomited it out? V'chazar v'achal chatzi zayit acher. And then you ate another half a zayit, a different one. So altogether you ate a whole kazayit, but part of it never got swallowed. My time, so why are you going to be obligated? Very obviously, according to Rabbi Yochanan, harena henegro no bekazayit, because in the end, your mouth benefited from a kazayit, even though you didn't finish it, right? Even though you vomited it out. This is by the way, I was thinking it's a little different, but We always think about when you take medicine and then you vomit right after, right? Did it go down or did it not go down? Did your body swallow it or not? Anyway, it's a little bit different, but it made me think about this. By Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Asi. Now Rabbi Elazar asks an even more disgusting question. Achal chatzi zayit v'hikio v'chazar v'achalo mahu. What if you ate a half a zayit? You vomited it out and then you ate that same half a zayit again. Now this is fascinating because in the end you benefit from a whole zayit in your mouth, but you didn't really because in the end you didn't even have a whole zayit. It was a half a zayit that you vomited out and then put it back in your mouth again. So the Gemara asked, now when Rabbi Elazar asked Rabbi Asi this question, the Gemara wants to know, my violate. What is he really asking? If he's asking, ihavi ikul, lo havi ikul, do we consider this as if it was so much digested and it's not actually food anymore? So when you eat the half a zayit the second time, maybe it's not actually called eating. But tibayale kazayit. But then he should have asked this question about a whole zayit. What if you ate a whole zayit, vomited it out, then ate it again? Now, the same zayit, what would the question be? It would be a different question, but the same idea. Is it digested? And if so, well, then you only ate one kazayit and you're obligated lashes once. If you view it as two zaytim, then you would be obligated for two different eatings, right? Each one a kazayit, you'd get two sets of lashes. So you should have asked the question in that case. If you say it's whether it follows, your mouth or does it get digested? We should know that already from what Rabbi Asi said, because he said already it's all in the mouth, not what gets digested. So we don't really understand why he was asking Rabbi Asi this question. It was obvious what the answer was, or either he should have asked about a whole kazayit, or it's obvious what the answer was from his previous statement. To which they say, Rabbi Asi Gemara Iakerle. What really happened in this story? Rabbi Asi forgot what he had learned. Va'ata Rabbi Elazar la'adkure. Rabbi Elazar came and he wanted to remind him. So what did he do? He said to him like this: Lama li chatzi zayit acher? Why did you ask the question about a chatzi zayit, a different chatzi zayit? Lema mar bedide. Why didn't you just ask the question about its own? If you ate the same half a zayit twice, after you vomited it, you re-ate it. Because then you could have learned two things from it. You could have learned shamina mina de lo havi equal. You could have learned number one, it's not digested. This shamina mina de harena hanegro no bekazayit, and you would have known that you'll be obligated because you already benefited from in the end you benefited from a kazayit. So that would have been a better case to have brought. So he asked him, what's the halacha? Ishtik v'lo amar le v'lo midi. He said, listen, he was silent. Rabbi Asi didn't know what to answer because he obviously forgot. Marle mofet hador. Rabbi Elazar says, you gadol hador, you're such a great man. Lo zimnan sagi and amar kamei to Rabbi Yochanan. Didn't you sometimes sit before Rabbi Yochanan the amar lach harena hanegro no bekazayit? In other words, weren't there cases where you told me already that you sat before Rabbi Yochanan and you asked him this and he said nehanegro no bekazayit, even if you vomit up the same thing and spit it out, and even if you, vomit it up, put it back in your mouth, you're going to be obligated because at the end, it's all about the mouth benefiting from a kazayit of food. So it doesn't, a kazayit of the limb. So it doesn't matter if it's the same food, you're going to be obligated anyway. And with that, Hadran alachgid and Ashe, moving on, as I told you, to Basar B'chalav. Okay, very interesting chapter. Let's get started. Kol habasar asur levashel b'chalav. Okay, this comes from the Torah. Lo tavashel gedi b'chalev imo. It says it 3 times. The rabbis darshan, one for cooking, one because it says don't cook, but obviously you can't eat it, don't eat it, and one that you can't even benefit from stuff that was cooked together. Okay, milk and meat together. Now the Mishnah tells us this is not only true for a gedi, okay, for a kid, a baby goat, but it's true for any animal. Kol habasar, and not just animals, birds as well. Chutz mi basar dagim v'chagavim, just not for fish and grasshoppers. Now, some of the commentaries, Tosfot asked this question, the Ran as well. They each have their own answer. We're not going to get into it, but why does this start differently than all the other Mishnayot in all the previous chapters we had, right? It's chaya, behema chaya, v'of, or not chaya, or, right, or muktashim, chullin, right? Whether it's ba'aretz, b'chutz la'aretz, doesn't talk about any of that. And it just says very generally all basar, other than fish and grasshoppers. And notice that it only says asur levashel. It doesn't say it's asur to eat. Now, first of all, there's a big debate. All the other animals besides the gedi, is it actually forbidden by Torah law or only by rabbinic law? There's a debate about this among the commentaries. And then if we say all of them, why does it say only cooking? So the Rashba says cooking and obviously eating. Okay, if you can't cook it, you obviously can't eat it. The Ran says it's actually just talking about cooking, and what it wants to tell you is even though these are all perhaps only rabbinic, they're still obligated to cook. You might say maybe it's only an obligation if you eat them. But even to cook, you're already going to get lashes for it. But the Rambam, the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch say it's an Asur Derabanan for all the other animals and says that you're actually not obligated for cooking them, only for eating them. Then you have to explain why does it say bishul here? And the Maggid Mishnah explains, commentary on the Rambam, that what he really meant, what it's really eating in the Mishnah. Okay, it says bishul because that was the word used in the verse. Okay, lo tivashel gdi b'chalevimo. But it really means eating, and actually cooking is not an obligation. That's a very creative interpretation because it definitely isn't what it sounds like from here. Okay, those are a bunch of interesting things about this Mishnah. Now we're going to go on. You can't put it on the table with cheese. Why? Because there's a concern that maybe the cheese will mix in with the meat, and you might end up eating basar b'chalav together. Chutz mi basar dagim b'chagavim. This line is unnecessary because if you can obviously eat them mixed together, then obviously you could put them on the table together. But because it said in the beginning, so they add this here too. Obviously, you could put on the table cheese with fish and grasshoppers. It's not a problem. Okay, we're going to stop here for today. Very interesting section. We have a lot to look forward to in the next bunch of dapim. Okay, so quick review. We started with this machlok Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish about eating Eber Menachai, that's a treifa also. Are you obligated 2 or 1? And what are the 4 ways to possibly understand the machlok between them? Rabbi Chia bar Abba and Rabbi Yochanan, and then Rabbi Ami in the name, and Rabbi Aval in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who had this debate, what Rabbi Yochanan really said about eating chelev from the chai, from the treifa. And we had a similar 3 ways of explaining the machlok between them. We have 2 or 3, all relating to isur chal, isur or not. Then we had this statement of this machloket, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, about, we talked about the food being split up, and are you obligated if they were split up outside the mouth or they were split up inside the mouth? We have the machloket Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish about, is it what's in your throat, or is it what gets in your mouth, or is it what gets swallowed into your body that you're obligated for? The kazayit has to be complete there. And we got into the question of the vomiting. What if it's the same kazayit, even that you half a kazayit and another half a kazayit that was vomited and read, and how far do we take this needing to be in your mouth? And we do seem to take it pretty far. As long as you have a kazayit in your mouth, you're going to be obligated. And then we ended with this kol basar, asur l'bashel b'chalav, and starting the whole prohibition of basar b'chalav together. And with that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day.